Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this week's trade review session and also the live trading session. So, a few things slightly different this week. I have managed to do a couple of foreign exchange trades, a couple of euro trades. As I mentioned earlier, they're of a significantly bigger size than the trades that I'm posting on the indices. So I'm not looking for the TP levels that I may have been looking for on my normal index and gold trades. A few things to talk about this week. Some of the stops and the TP levels that I've been setting, the fact that they've been missing and how I've had to adjust during the course of the week. It's very much been a week of two halves, Monday and Tuesday, lots of stops, negative returns on those days, and then thankfully from Wednesday the trading has been consistently profitable, and I don't think there have been many losing trades at all. So it's worked well, certainly since Wednesday, although I have carried a couple of trades a little bit longer than ideally I would have liked. So if you do have questions, please post those in the normal area. I'll get to see those and I will respond as quickly as I can as I see those coming through. So got the markets up on your screens there at the moment. The euro, after going down to about 112.50 today, is back up above that 113 line. Probably bought into it into the trade a little bit too early the second time round this afternoon, but I think 113 is going to be and remain a key level for the foreseeable future. So still certainly interested in buying into that market on dips below 113, probably 13-14 points above it at the moment. Gold has had another seesaw day really. We've been down to about 153, back up to about 18, we've been down to about 1853, up to about 1860 or so. I think the thing of note, and the euro still climbing higher there at 113.20. The thing really of note has been the weakness that we've seen in the indices and how that has completely evaporated in the last hour or so. And we've seen a rally in the DAX from just below 16,100 to almost 16,200, where we most recently traded. And then in the Dow, where I mentioned this morning that I didn't want to go bottom picking, I did go bottom picking and have thankfully just got out of that last trade that I had there, where I bought at 35,794, just sold that at 824, so taken a profit on that trade. So with the opening bell just around the corner, I mean, one of the things, and I've mentioned it many times when we're doing these sessions, is you quite often get an overreaction during the European trading period, be that an overreaction to the upside if we're trending higher, or an overreaction to the downside when we're trading lower. And sometimes when we're trading lower, what we often see is a complete reversal and some as we head to the opening bell in New York, and that's clearly what we've seen today. We're there at 35,820 now. We've been as low as 35,650, which coincidentally was the low a couple of days ago, and seems to be offering a reasonable level of support as we trade down towards those particular points. So I'm only going to do one trade for the live trading session. Pretty much undecided what that's going to be at this point. Obviously inflation and other issues are still causing concerns to the market. We have inflation at record levels in the UK, the US, and pretty much globally. So the dollar has obviously gained a lot of strength over the last couple of weeks, or certainly the last 10 days or so. So as we approach the opening bell, I think what I'm going to do is actually let the market open rather than try to put a trade in before. And what I'm possibly expecting to see as we get to the opening bell is a continuation of this move. So, it could well be that we open higher and push back to the closing levels that we saw yesterday, which would be up around 35,940. So still an appetite definitely from investors to buy on these dips. The question I just have for myself is how big that appetite is at this stage, and how many people are going to come in and either firstly support this market and then secondly push back to those levels that we saw yesterday. So with about 2.5 minutes left to go, we're trading just below the 35,800 level, so we're off about 130 or 140 pips from where we were trading yesterday. And there's been an awful lot of fluctuation, so we could really open up at any point from here. We've dropped off about 20 points in the last 30 seconds or so whilst I've been talking. So first thing I'm going to do is bring up the Dow just so that we're looking at that. You can see this now. I have a 1 minute chart open here, so you can see the fairly dramatic movement that we've seen off of these lows. So if I just put some crosshairs there, so these are the lows that we saw today. Went a little bit lower than I initially thought. We went down to about 610, 620 or 615, 620. And then as we've approached this bell, so from early this afternoon, and probably only 40 minutes or so ago, we've seen this really significant rally very quickly. And obviously as the buyers as the opening bells have been coming in. Sorry, my phone is clicking and I'm getting various reports coming through. But as we've approached the opening bell, we've seen a complete sea change, and obviously as people are looking at the opening bell in the US and seeing how those orders are stacking up, they're obviously seeing more buyers than sellers at these levels, or certainly not as many sellers as they were initially expecting. And so we are looking a lot firmer than we were maybe 90 minutes ago. So currently back down, so thankfully I got out of that trade up above the 35.8 level, so we're 35.780, and we've been 20-25 pips either side of this in the last 30 seconds or so. So still fairly aggressive, moving around quite a bit. Back there at 35.804, and the market is open. So we're seeing it stabilise, if that's the correct word, around 35,775, just trading around those levels at the moment. So what I'm going to do is, and again, as I always will, I caution everybody against bottom picking, but I'm going to try to get long this market around 741, so probably the midpoint of where we've traded over the last 90 minutes or so. So I'm just triggered there, we've fallen away a little bit, so there is a bit of volatility pushing down towards that 35,700 line. So I'm not going to add to this position, I'm really just going to let this one play out. So I bought there at 35,741. We're about 10 pips 10-15 pips lower than that at the moment. We have been 20 to 25 pips, and there's still a lot of activity going through at this time, so there's no stop immediately onto it. I'll probably just put something in from a TP perspective, back up at around 770 level. And we'll see how that trades over the next 10 minutes or so as we finish up here. So just looking, what we'll move on to is the trades for the week. So with the one Dow trade that I've just transacted, which will be the last trade of the week, we're looking at a profit of something like 565 pips. A lot of stops triggered on Monday and Tuesday. I'll talk about those in a minute. Then, as I mentioned earlier, pretty much or certainly a 95%, 98% record from Wednesday onwards. So Romano's saying, how do I find Vantage compared to Avatrade? Especially with the pip counts smaller on the trades. Now, I think my answer to the question is that Vantage for me takes a little bit of getting used to because I've traded futures for so many years. So with the futures prices, what you do tend to find is that you'll see less volatility, and sometimes it's just a visual thing where you're trying to get used to how many times the price is changing, and it might just be changing by a fraction of a decimal point. Whereas with the futures, it would have been fairly static at 5, 6 or 50, 60 for a period of time. That's flashing so many more times. So visually, it took a lot of getting used to. I think the price action is a bit more gappy. Would be one of my observations. So, and I think I've mentioned it a few times this week when I've been trying to get fills on particular trades as well. Those fills have been nowhere near as good as I would have wanted them to be, and certainly not getting the price that I was looking for after either. Markets are falling away here a little bit with the Dow, so we're down to about 35,670, trading at the low at the moment. But just with the intensity of that movement that we saw earlier, I think after this initial 10 minutes or so has started to filter through, hopefully we'll see a bit of a pickup from there. But as I say that, we're continuing to move, or whilst we're stabilising a little bit, the movement has been lower from the trade that I took. Surprising after we saw that significant movement in the last hour or so, or last half an hour into the opening bell. So I'll just keep an eye on that in case I do have to stop out of it. But just going back to the trades, look, there are huge differences between Vantage and trading futures at Ava. So there is certainly an amount of getting used to it. That has no impact with where stops or anything like that are related. I think this morning was probably the first time that I didn't sell DAX this morning. It was probably the first time that it sold off today in that initial period. So, a little bit reticent about that. But again, if you look to the trades at the beginning of the week, there was one gold stop as we pushed back up towards 1876. And the DAX has been fairly relentless in its move higher, and I think I was stopped out on the DAX 3 times, twice on the Dow. So the start to the week was particularly difficult, but as I said, we've manoeuvred our way through that, past that, and are now looking at a significant gain for the week. Unfortunately, with one trade left open that could potentially do a little bit of damage at the moment. I will keep or as I finish this session, I will put a stop onto that trade. May average it for the next period of the day, but we'll look to protect it as much as I can. There were some stops that were triggered pretty poorly during the course of the week. I think that taught me my lesson in relation to running stops overnight. There was an element of stop hunting, in my opinion. And the market pushed up to my stop, triggered, and then fell away. So there are many ways that you can guard against that. Either not having an open trade, not having a stop, that brings with it an added amount of risk. But now that I've seen things happen, I wouldn't expect to get caught out twice on those sort of things. So I'll watch that. But overall, it's been a good week. Because the trade is open and running against me, what I'll do is probably leave you here and think about whether I'm going to take a second position and average that out a little bit, bring some tight stops in, I do still think that we are going to see buying on these dips. Gold for me is still a sell. I've already mentioned the euro. I think anything below 113 is a good buy. Let me get back to that trade. If you do have any other questions, email them through to Sam or I, and I will get back to you over the course of the next few hours or so. But these two, if there are two, trades will be the last trades of